I first got to know Rokt exactly 1 year ago when Elizabeth Buchanan, who's a CCO, a good friend of mine and a fellow board member of a great nonprofit called Vital Voices, we were in Europe mentoring young women, and we were sitting at a French cafe, and she was trying to describe to me what Rokt is all about. And I was trying to understand, and then she said, you know, when you buy those shoes online and then they follow you all over the internet, that's what we're trying to stop and solve. And I realized, yeah, I get it. I mean, why is e-commerce still, frankly, not very bright? It doesn't help me, and it certainly didn't help the department store that sold me those shoes. So we're really excited to explore some of those issues this afternoon, particularly as e-commerce is exploding during this pandemic, making transactions smarter, more efficient, more relevant to consumers is so important now more than ever. We're going to start off with Sucharita Kandali. She is principal analyst at Forrester Research. Sucharita is really a leading expert in e-commerce. She's had stops at Saks Fifth Avenue, Toys R Us, and the Walt Disney Company before leading this research here today and being with Forrester. She's going to take us through some of the research and surveys that underlie all of e-commerce and what's happening today. Sucharita, take it away.
We have an amazing panel, and I know everybody wants to jump to them and what they have to say. But what I do want to do is spend about 5 minutes talking about this awesome study that I'm super excited about that Forrester did for Rokt. And I'm saying it's awesome, not just because I wrote the survey questions and I'm so excited to see the results, but because it's actually a really, really interesting study about personalization in e-commerce that showcases a lot of data that I have been looking for years, but never could find. So let me share with you a little bit of what that is. So this study was a consumer and a retailer study. So what we did is that we surveyed a number of shoppers of different age demographics, different regions, and then we also surveyed a bunch of retailers that were in the retail industry, and the travel industry, and the ticketing and entertainment industry. So it was a cross-section of both the B2B as well as a B2C survey. Now, I want to walk you through some of the key findings, because this was really about what is the role of personalization, how important is it to commerce transactions, but also what are the things that people like in a personalization experience and what frustrates them. So a lot of the data that's here you've probably seen before, which is that, of course, consumers like personalization. They expect kind of some degree of making experiences simpler, faster. They want experiences tailored to them. And in some cases, they'll even be willing to share that information with you, some information, personal information, in exchange for getting some type of value. Now, the gap is, of course, on the merchant side, because they too say, oh, it's a really, really high priority. 88% of merchants will say that, kind of delivering on that personalized experience is a critical part of their to-do list, and it's something that they mark as incredibly vital to their organization. However, only 36% have the processes in place to actually execute against it, whether it is one-to-one personalization or even taking advantage of the data points and the transactional signals that they may have. So there's several slides that sort of lay the foundation and the framework for what will be the heart of the insights and the data. So I highly, highly encourage everybody to try to get their hands on the full set of findings from this study. It is, it's like 20 plus pages and has a lot of great data and insights across different demographics too. So some of the key highlights are, what specifically are the things that companies can do to stop customer frustration in the course of personalizing. So this was some of the data points that I hadn't seen before, which is name define for me very specifically what is good or bad personalization. And a lot of it I thought that was interesting to glean from this were data points that are not rocket science to solve or to actually deliver for customers. But the things that are the highest value add are exactly what Nina just mentioned, which is seeing that same message over and over again, or asking people, kind of if they want to download an app that they actually already have installed on their phone. So it's these levels of detail, and this was just a partial list. I mean, the entire list of everything that frustrates or delights is in the complete study, which we'll have. And then in contrast to what are those elements that frustrate customers, there are also these elements that delight customers. And what are the things that people want when they hear the expression, communicating relevance? What does that mean? And in many cases, as you can see here, a lot of it is about discounts and savings, and even just sharing the information across different devices so that persistent information is kept, whether it is information about who is accessing content or even a shared shopping cart. The other piece of information that I thought was really, really interesting from this study was the demarcation of that fine line between personalization and privacy. We know that particularly as a lot of the legal frameworks are coming into place around what companies can do with our data, whether it's GDPR, CCPA, or the new proposition in California, which is going to be an even stricter version of CCPA. As marketers, we all want to understand how do you know what's okay to use? What are consumers okay with sharing in different scenarios? And that's what a lot of this study gets into too, is the value exchange. What are the things that people are willing to share with marketers, that they're absolutely fine with you taking advantage of in order to get, whether it's relevant personalization, relevant recommendations, information at checkout, emails, what's okay. And you'll see here on this list, I mean, there's some things that are, table stakes. It's pretty basic. There are logical things that shoppers will be willing to share, like a loyalty program information or the previous purchase history, an online shopping cart. But there are other things that persistently have come up in various types of research that consumers aren't okay with. Things like your in-store location, your online search history, social network information. All of those things are much, much more risky to take advantage of in the course of personalization. And of course, we have data points on ROI and the impact and what happens when you don't do good personalization. And a lot of it is that consumers punish brands who don't deliver against those relevant experiences, or when they deliver against experiences that brands think are relevant, but in actuality really aren't. And then we wrap up with a number of recommendations and to-dos that we think all brands should take forward, whether it is auditing your MarTech stack or kind of thinking about how do you augment and make the business case for those personalization investments. So that is basically the high-level run-through of that research paper. I encourage everybody to try to get your hands on it. You can reach out to me or reach out to the Rokt team.
Sucharita, that was fascinating. Thanks so much. A lot to chew on with this Rokt Star panel we've got here. I want to introduce everybody to our audience. We've got Bozoma St. John. She's CMO of Netflix. Soon going to be one of those people that we're just going to say needs no introduction, frankly. She got her start with Spike Lee's ad agency, and then she's had this storied marketing career that took her to Apple Music, Uber, the Endeavor talent agency, and now, of course, to Netflix. So, Boz, thanks so much for being here, my friend.
Good to see you, Nina.
Good to see you. Our next panelist is Russell Wallach. He is president of Live Nation Media and Sponsorship. And of course, I probably don't have to tell anyone that Live Nation is the world's largest entertainment company with artists and global festivals and concerts all over the world. and it's really the gateway to 100 million fans. Russell, tell us what's in back of you. Is it still there, that photo?
Oh, it is. It is a Springsteen show from, I think, 2016 at Nationals Park here in Washington, D.C., actually where I am right now.
So I was just telling Russell before we got on that I was actually at that concert. So that was a nice, thrilling detail. And finally, Bruce Buchanan. Now, Bruce, as you probably know, is the CEO of Rokt, which means it was also his idea. So this is a good moment to step back, Bruce, if you don't mind, and tell us about the exciting news that was in the Wall Street Journal this morning, and a little bit about how your idea for this technology came to be.
Thanks, Nina, and thanks for hosting. It's great to be here. Very excited to announce our Series D today. So we've just raised 80 million. It always feels like 8 years into these journeys, it's these small moments you have where you're able to celebrate a lot of hard work from a huge number of people in the team. So the success really belongs to what we call our rock stars, all 265 of them. So I want to thank all of them. But the idea for Rokt came from 10 years of running an airline in Asia. So I built an airline called Jetstar, which became the largest low fares airline, similar to Southwest or EasyJet for those in Europe or the US. And we realized low-cost airlines are like one of the first direct-to-consumer retail businesses trying to sell directly to consumers before the internet even existed. If you think about Southwest with call centers a long, long time ago. And through that time, we realized that our e-commerce shopfront was sort of like an old version. It was a complete version of our retail storefront. And the experience consumers had made such a difference to the economics of the airline. And through that journey, we realized we could double the profitability if we could just work out how to personalize and tailor each customer's experience. And for a business with 14,000 people and $10 billion of capital deployed, the ability to double your profitability with a piece of technology sounded pretty exciting. And that was the idea behind Rokt. So 8 years ago, it was founded in Sydney, and now we're a global business with about 3,000 clients.
And truly, it's you couldn't have imagined, or maybe you did, just how relevant all of this is today in e-commerce and the extent to which e-commerce is truly taking off. Let's start, Sucharita, if you could lay the groundwork just a little bit more. Tell us why simplicity was your #1 recommendation out of the study.
Yeah, because that's really what consumers said they responded more to. And it's something that also retailers are well positioned. Anybody who is a merchant is well positioned to deliver. Nobody wants, solution which is much more complicated or introduces extraneous information to them. So that's really the guts of it. People just want to have as few clicks as possible. They want merchants to recognize them when they want to be recognized. And what that means, Nina, is in those touch points in the experience. So that's exactly what you described earlier in Paris, which is like there's a difference between, identifying somebody and chasing them around the internet when they have not clearly given you permission to do so, versus when they are logging onto or looking to access the information on 2 different devices. That's really all they're looking for. Those are the moments that they want you to identify them.
And Bose, did this resonate with you in your career in the past, particularly this kind of frustration that consumers have when they go online and try to make a transaction?
Well, I mean, I think personalization has always been one of those tricky areas, in that it's like if you know too much, people are scared. And if you know too little, they hate you. And there doesn't seem to be any middle. And so I think each of us probably in our experiences have had to toe the line on that, and helping to make sure that it's like, oh, I care enough about you to know exactly what to serve up to you in an appropriate way. But if I do it too much, then you think I'm watching you and you're creeped out and then you don't like me. And so trying to figure that out, I mean, has certainly, I've seen the challenges in each of the businesses that I've been in, and trying to, again, like balance it. I actually don't think that there's a universal answer. It feels like it's very much specific to the business or the company. Some of it is in the brand development, and so really being able to communicate to the consumer or to the audience what the business is serving, and then sometimes you're given more allowances because of the types of conversations that you've had with the audience, versus others.
An example of that, Bose.
Well, of course, in the music business, so maybe Russell will feel this too, because we certainly run across each other in many places. But it's funny because when I was at Apple Music, having to serve up options for either listening, right, through the algorithm or even through playlists, which were designed to follow your taste, meant that, people felt more aligned to the brand and therefore felt more loyal to the platform if I could predict what they would like to hear, based on obviously their listening. However, that becomes very tricky if you end up playing something or giving them something that reminds them of like 3 weeks ago, because it's like, well, then how long are you storing my information? And the truth of the matter is that, like, well, yeah, if you like listening to, Bruce Springsteen and I serve you up some Tupac, you might not be very happy with me, and then you may not return. And so again, I think it really just it's determined based on the brand likability, and sometimes on even the behavior of past experiences with the brand in order for the consumer to give you some allowances to get to know them really well.
So Russell, you've worked in this space a lot, and you've worked in partnership with Rokt on that kind of creating that personal experience. Tell us what works versus what doesn't.
Well, I think, I agree with Bose, right? I think in terms of what works and what doesn't work, it's going to be different for every business. I think it's, we've got a lot of different types of customers that are coming to our site, so from a personalization standpoint, and even from an experience standpoint, I think the key things are like, for us in many cases is simplicity and speed, right? So if you take one example would be, it's 9:59 a.m. and the Lady Gaga tickets go on sale at 10 a.m. and you're in front of your computer or on your app, that there's millions of people, right, that are looking to buy those tickets, and there's a finite number of tickets. And so what you're focused on in that experience is, I just want to get through as quickly as possible. I want to buy my tickets. I want to get that confirmation email. I want to go into my Ticketmaster account, and I want to see my tickets in there. That's all I care about. Now, through that process, though, we will ask if you're open to us coming back to you after the fact, right, with some relevant offers. And a lot of our customers say yes to that. And this is an area actually we work with Bruce and the Rokt team. So if you think about what's going to be a relevant offer, so I'll use one because we've got, Bose here. So let's just say, I know that Netflix has an amazing Lady Gaga documentary. I know that I've got, millions of Lady Gaga fans. So why wouldn't we go back to our customers, our fans, and say, hey, here's a special offer for a, Netflix subscription for a couple of months. Check out Lady Gaga. The creative is with Gaga on it. That would hopefully be relevant to that fan. Or maybe there's other artists that Bose and I know. If you like Gaga, you also like these other fans. She's got a whole slate of programming that might make sense, right? So that would be one example. The flip experience would be, I'm sitting in LA, and a couple months later, and I know I'm going to be in New York, and I see that there's Gaga tickets there available. So I'm like, oh, that would be great. Well, in that instance, you don't have the same concern about going through the process. So maybe during that experience, we would offer you up, maybe you need to buy some airline tickets via our airline partner, or a hotel with our hotel partner. And again, my role is nuanced as well, because I actually lead our brand and partnership business. So I've got to make sure that any brand or partner I bring into the mix lives up to that. Is it enhancing the experience in some way? Is it relevant to the fan? And again, I give a lot of credit to Bruce and his team, that they've really been able to help us make sure that we're delivering those appropriate offers in that different type of situation for that different fan, for that different type of customer.
So it sounds like, and I'd like Bose and Russell, let's start with you, Russell, to weigh in. It sounds like the just ask piece is critical. Ask first.
Yeah, I
And
think
then Bose.
without a doubt, and again, from a marketing standpoint, I much prefer to hear from Bose, but yes, I think that you want the permission, and you want to do it in the right way, and you want them to say yes, please share offers with me. And again, you got to remember, our business is e-commerce, right? It's digital and physical. So when they say that to us, it's not only because they want an offer for maybe a hotel or Netflix or something else, but there's also things that are actually happening at the live event. And so that's one of, I think, the advantages for us in this experience, that they're very, very open to it. And again, like many e-commerce companies that may not have the permission to talk to that fan, if going back to my Gaga example, the show is not for 6 months. There's a lot of opportunities leading up to that show where I may be able to interact with you. And as long as you've said okay, and as long as I keep talking to you in a way that makes sense and is relevant to you, that I'm looking truly to enhance your experience, I think our fans are saying yes, please.
So Bose, is that critical to this whole transaction, is ask?
Yes, that is very critical. But I also love Henry Ford's quote, it's like, if you'd asked what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. I always remember that, right? Which is that, like, sometimes you ask and people are going to send you down the wrong path. So even though I wholeheartedly agree with Russell on the ask and all of the examples that he gave, I think we do have to balance that with understanding what else we can do from an innovation standpoint, or what we can offer that perhaps they didn't even know was on the table, that our ask can be sort of specific to what we are the action we're trying to take, but then also offer things without the ask that are complementary to what they've agreed to. And it will help make our business a little broader.
Without annoying the customer. Bruce, what's your take on all that?
It reminds me of a story back in the early Jetstar days. We had 2 British Airways directors on the Qantas board, and they told this story about a misfire on personalization, which always makes me smile. And it is all about asking. If people expect something and have asked for it, then I think it is okay. And as long as the expectation's there and you've got permission, I think you're free to do a whole lot of stuff. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But the misfire always makes me laugh was they were trying to get greater personalization with their frequent flyers on board their flights. And they were greeting one of their top frequent flyers who was with his wife going on a holiday. And they greeted him, hello, Mr. Jones. It's great to see you back only 1 week after your trip to the Caribbean. And he told his wife, obviously, he was on a business trip. And, that resulted in a divorce and a big blow up, and they pulled the program within like 7 days. And so you hear those sorts of stories are obvious, and you would think if you'd think of them about them beforehand, but big companies, even like British Airways, miscue on these things all the time. But in terms of, look, my take on this stuff is I think the simple things are relatively straightforward. If you open up your Netflix app, you don't want to log in each time. If you bought on Live Nation, you don't want to get an app download message if you're a regular customer each time. The more subtle version of this, which I think is a little bit more interesting, is it sort of blends in with this research that was put out some time ago called the paradox of choice, where simplicity and getting something that is right for the consumer is important, but actually also what's important is combining that with a minimization of too much choice. Because if you put too much choice in front of a consumer, you can often lead to adverse outcomes. And I think there's businesses like Trader Joe's in the US that have been written up many, many times around how they've done this well and why their retail profitability is twice that of most other supermarkets. And that's because they don't have 1,000 versions of ketchup on the shelf. They have two. And you can get to a point where you overwhelm consumers with too much choice. And so I think simplicity at its obvious point is, how do I make the experience right? The next lens of that is, how do I not overwhelm the customer, and how do I make sure the choices I'm putting in front of them are going to be close enough to right, but I'm not going to give them too many choices.
And Bruce, I imagine that you've been on, during these 8 years of building Rokt, a journey about this. I mean, learning what it is that consumers want and don't want. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like what you've learned and lessons learned from this?
One of the big ones was that, which is a lot of businesses struggle with what they want to do with their customer. And so what you typically find is there's a new initiative in lots of businesses all the time. There'll be a social initiative and an app download initiative and then a loyalty program initiative. And often these are in different departments. And what ends up happening from a consumer perspective is these get layered onto the consumer experience, and you get more and more cluttered consumer experiences to the point where it can become overwhelming for a consumer. And one of the things we found on that journey early on was often less is more. Actually having a cleaner experience and having something that is more tailored often delivers a much, much better outcome overall. And you can deliver better outcomes on every single one of those dimensions that often you're trying to achieve when you put 20 things in front of a customer, just by making sure you put them in front of the right customer at the right time and don't overwhelm them. So things like UX are super important, things like personalization are important, things like not overwhelming the customer is really, really important.
Are there nuts that you're still trying to crack?
I think, what's really interesting about our business is we're often trusted in the middle of different businesses. And that's an interesting world where you get into cross uses of data. And so I know, for instance, that this person's already a Netflix customer. They don't want to sign up to a Netflix, but they're on Live Nation. Those sorts of things where you get to interesting use of the data, and how far do you take that? I mean, the customer, as you can see through this research, 88% of customers want you to use that information because they don't want to be given irrelevant things presented to them. But then you get to some interesting fine lines, and you also get to some different issues in different countries in terms of privacy and how you use that data, and how you make sure you get consent every time you're trying to put something like that in front of them that's relevant.
Sucharita, what does this track with the research, and what do you think are the next kind of obstacles for e-commerce and when it comes to transactions?
Yeah. All of this is, I'm just, so absorbing all of it. It's fantastic. It absolutely tracks with a lot of the research that we have. And I think that what is next is not just, what's that right experience at that moment in time, but also balancing revenue goals and profitability goals that companies may have, and trying to identify those customers that, maybe, for instance, their elasticity is flatter than others, or some customers who may be indifferent between choice A and choice B, and can you give that that option that is maybe the more margin-rich option to that customer, to one customer versus another. And an example that I'm thinking about is, like, through the course of the pandemic, there were all these companies that were offering curbside pickup, as an example, and Target in particular was one company that only offered curbside pickup in certain regions through its app, presumably because it was looking to get more people engaged with the app, and it was a twofold goal of app usage, as well as perhaps for other consumers, kind of dissuading them from kind of the curbside option, which is actually a more expensive option for a lot of retailers. So I thought that was was really, really interesting because it's not that just this blanket, oh, everybody wants curbside, so let's just give it to everybody, but it's leveraging what you know to try to change behavior and you know, to take advantage of the assets that you have, whether it's an app or whether it is, you know, kind of transaction through another device to shift people to what is your goal as a business as well.
And Bose, what have you found that kind of works and doesn't work, and gets the outcomes that these companies need?
Do you mean in the personalization?
Yes, I'm sorry, in personalization, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just it. I mean, again, I think we're all saying that it really, you know, there's not one blanket answer. I mean, that's what's so difficult about it, and that's also what's so magical. You know, if there was one answer, none of us would be sitting here. You know, we would have figured it out. We would have been doing something else by now. Maybe except for Bruce, who would be ruling the world. But the point is that I believe that there's really a great opportunity, you know, for us to continue to have the dynamic conversation with our consumers, especially as the world evolves. You know, I think none of us could have predicted this very moment in time. But all of our businesses have had to evolve because of it. And so perhaps that's an even bigger lesson, right? I think maybe 5 years ago, I probably said on a different panel that the world was changing faster in terms of consumer behavior and how we need to interact with them from a personalization standpoint. But who knew this was coming? And so now it's like, you know, you really have to be more timely, you know, and more relevant. And so for each of us, the innovation and how we're speaking to people and our customers and our consumers perhaps even needs to shift from just being so focused on what we're offering to what it is they actually need, you know, and then how can our product or service respond to that need? And that should be our overwhelming priority right now.
So again, what's an example of that? Need versus...
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, if we think about the state of the world, or let's just take like 3 months ago, right? It seems like the distant past now. But 3 months ago, we were all still getting semi-comfortable in what, you know, shelter at home, but the level of anxiety and sort of a little bit of chaos, right? Not understanding what is going to happen or how long. We were just getting over the fact that we thought, you know, things would be opened up again in, you know, 2 months or 3 months, and we realized that it's going to be a whole lot longer. That very moment in time, I think a lot of, especially the businesses that I've been in, you know, when they are entertainment focused, needed to shift from being just about like sort of the, you know, discovery to some sort of comfort, right? And escape for people. And so the way that, at least for myself as a marketer, needed to adjust the way that, you know, we're talking to the audience is to make sure that we are offering up something that is going to make people feel at home, you know, and feel comfortable, feel like they can escape to it. Versus anything else. And so I think, again, it's just about trying to adjust to the mood and the timing of what is happening in the world, instead of, you know, perhaps the message could have been one of like exploration and discovery. And it's like, yeah, we're not going anywhere. Nobody's discovering anything. You know, we just want to feel safe. And so changing the messaging and personalizing it based on that understanding, it was key.
To a more comforting message too, I imagine. And Russell, I'm sure you're kind of have been in a pressure cooker to not only meet but exceed customer expectations. Give us some examples of how you've been doing that.
Well, I think I like the term that Bose used in terms of having kind of this dynamic conversation with your fans or customers. You know, we refer to them as fans, and I think this idea of anticipating things that they may want that they never even imagined was possible. And so, you know, an example might be, I'll use, you know, Bonnaroo, right? A camping festival. So you bought your ticket, and all of a sudden we serve you up an offer that says, hey, you could actually buy your tent right now. We'll set it up for you. And we'll also stock your tent with all of the groceries and everything that you want. And you can do, you know, it's just a couple clicks away, right? So things that they never even thought about, that all of a sudden we can provide that to them. And, you know, and then, you know, my business, I bring in an REI or some other brand that also makes them feel comfortable and confident that it's going to be quality. So, you know, that would be one experience, right, to a festival goer versus maybe the fan that you know, bought tickets to a show in New York City, and they bought really expensive tickets. So you know that this person, they're a big fan, they spent a lot of money, but we also have an opportunity maybe for meet and greets with the artist after the show. Well, all of a sudden serving that up, they may never even thought that, oh my gosh, it's my, you know, it's my husband's birthday and, you know, he's the biggest fan of whatever. I'm gonna, and all of a sudden it wasn't even on the radar. And then we've served them up something that we thought could be a chance that they could be interested in. And so that surprise and delight, that type of being able to elevate that experience to something they never imagined for is to me like one of the exciting parts of our business and what we can do with the right type of offers for our fans.
I love that. I love that how you phrase that, to surprise and delight fans. I mean, that's it's a really good way to look at it. And Bruce, just to bring you back into the conversation, I mean, you work with some of the biggest e-commerce brands, and I understand that 95% of your clients actually never leave. So what do you think accounts for the stickiness of your clientele?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think what's interesting is when you get an intersection of able to deliver the right experience for the customer, but importantly enough, also the right economic outcome for the business, you achieve something pretty special, because you cease to have this trade-off where I've got to compromise my customer experience by putting a display ad or something in front of it to get the revenue outcome I need. When you can actually create a great customer experience and achieve the economic outcome, you can, and the economic outcome that's material, like an economic outcome for the airline or for a business, lots of retailers that are struggling, but that actually gives them a competitive advantage in that sphere, or gives them a step change in their economics. You can create a step change in airlines, for instance. You can serve new communities. You can add new flights. You can do all sorts of really exciting things. And similarly in the live entertainment business and other things, you can bring artists to new communities. You can do all sorts of exciting things if the economics can shift. And so our lens on that is let's do something that actually delivers a much better customer outcome, but let's make sure we deliver the economics that is transformational enough that actually makes this a material difference to the businesses we work with. And that's our mission. So we say it's smarter, faster, and better, but we take a lens on the economics, not just the customer piece of it. And so in doing that, what you realize is the big economic prizes actually don't come from the surface level personalization, like Hi Nina, or Hi Bose, or Hi Russell. That sort of stuff is easy for everyone to do. But when you actually think about and deconstruct what an e-commerce transaction is, what you realize is it's lots of different businesses actually coming together at the same time. And there's a payment company, and there might be a shipping company, and there might be a loyalty-based thing, and you might be a tech-based plugin for your CRM. There's lots of things going on, and actually to make that, orchestrate that in a way that's relevant for the consumer is tough, because you're integrating different technology providers, different businesses, and you're trying to optimize the experience and the action in a way that's actually going to work for every single customer. And when you've got third-party businesses coming into these big enterprise e-commerce stacks, it's hard. And so ultimately, I think, that focus from the Jetstar days on how do we actually solve both the customer and the core economic challenge, I think is why we've been, seeing such high retention rates amongst our e-commerce clients.
So Sucharita, listening to Bruce, I can imagine a lot of e-commerce providers saying, that's a lot of money, it's a lot of resources, a lot of investment, a lot of just, work to all these levels. And they think of improving their commerce transactions or personalizing them really as a nice to have instead of a need to have. Is that true? And does it hurt them? How do they see the benefits? Or or loss of customers, or how do they see the deficits if they don't go this route?
Well, I think that at this point, it's now a cost of doing business. So I think that there's more downside to not getting it right and not balancing, as Bo said, that fine line between, kind of not scaring them, but not annoying them either. But what I think is also really, really important, because this is a theme that I've heard everyone on the panel kind of allude to, which is there's an art and a science to personalization. And I think that too many brands want to completely err on the science side and just assume that the algorithm's enough, like the algorithm will get you, everything you need. But so much is exactly what Bruce said, which is you've got to understand the scenarios. You've got to understand all the different opportunities, and there may be touch points to personalize that you didn't even think about. Like when Russell said earlier, kind of it depends on when the Lady Gaga ticket is being sold. Is it, kind of they're on sale in 10 minutes, or, kind of, is this for a trip that I'm planning on taking in 3 months? I don't know that a lot of retailers are thinking, they may be thinking about the consumer mindset, but they're not thinking about like availability of inventory, like what's that customer mindset at that moment in time. And all of that are things that as we all have to think about, and then you put it into the algorithm, and you just can't, assume that, kind of this algorithm is going to have all the answers for you. And I think that's where I think maybe some people get a little overwhelmed.
Let's talk about the future of e-commerce. Bose, I want to start with you, noting that 83% of surveyed brands believe that personalization to their e-commerce and marketing efforts will be more important now. How do you see the industry and e-commerce changing as a whole? Take us forward.
Yeah, exactly. The crystal ball, right? I get the lucky.
That's why I started with you, Bose.
Exactly. I'm like, I hope this is not being recorded and can be used to, judge me in like 3 years. Be like, Bo said, and she was totally wrong. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. But I do believe that this is one trend that is not going anywhere. Our need for personalization and to feel like humans in a world that continuously moves us closer and closer to tech and automation is going to be increasingly more important. And so even if the algorithm starts to feel more human, that will be to our advantage, as business leaders, as marketers, et cetera. That we certainly will want to feel like, as Bruce said, it's not just the, hi Nina and hi Russell. It is going to be about getting a little more in touch with what our needs are, and being able to be a little predictive. And I really do believe that there is an opportunity for us to be even smarter in that. I love the art and science that Sarita said about, because I certainly believe that there is an opportunity for us to get even more magical in these experiences that we're creating. So yes, that's my one prediction, that we get even more human, even in our predictability.
And on the flip side of that, do you think companies that don't do that don't, really run down this highway, will be punished? Will they feel the pain from it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's the same as, I always say that, well, when we're looking forward, it's great to look backwards as well, right? Because when you look at just even from a marketing standpoint, the more that we became more personalized in the way that we talk to people, so not just one blanket message for everyone. When we started to be more pointed in talking to certain communities, or started to make our demographics a little tighter, we found greater success, right? More brand affinity, more brand loyalty. And that happened like with print publications. It's like that started when, you would send messages in the circular to a certain zip code. And so if we're looking backwards at that experience and knowing that we were much better when we started being a little cleaner in how we were personalizing. I mean, now it's like, oh my gosh, sent to a zip code. That sounds crazy, But if we even take that from years ago and move it forward, absolutely, it gets better. The more we personalize, the better our experiences will be for our customers and consumers.
Well said. And Russell, how are you planning for 2021 on this front?
Well, look, I think, just following up a bit there, I think, when you think about art and science, in this, we kind of think about it as experience and science, right? I mean, we are in the experience business, so we've got to deliver. The artist is the one that's obviously going to deliver the experience at the live show. 2 hours of the greatest magic ever, right? We want to make that experience leading up to that as great as possible in every step of the way from the beginning of the buy. So, Bruce and Rokt's team is in many cases the science part for us, making sure that we can think about those types of offers that we want to use, and so they're the best, right? They're the best at that. As I look to 21 right now, we're focused on getting shows back up and getting the hundreds of millions of fans being all over the world in 40 plus countries, back to seeing live music. All of our research says that there's huge demand. People have held on to their tickets. They want to go to that shows as soon as it's possible. And
I think we can all agree. I think we all, right? Everybody, yes, true.
Yes, we all hopefully agrees. Everyone misses those live experiences, and so that's really what we're focused on right now.
That's so great. That's so great to hear. We miss those so much. Sucharita, I want to draw on your, not just the study, but your long time expertise in e-commerce. What is going to happen post-COVID? I mean, obviously that COVID has driven digital just faster. We're on hyperspeed change right now, which we wouldn't have been without the pandemic. But do you see any of those gains receding or changing or speeding up? Where are we going?
Well, I think that a lot of organizations have discovered that they can do things faster than they ever thought they could. And I think that what the result is going to be is that they're not going to be the excuses anymore in the future to say, oh, we can't do that or we shouldn't do that, because all of a sudden there are these data points from the last several months that, when everybody's aligned and you don't have departments of no, you can get things done very, very quickly. So I think that, kind of that pace of innovation amongst those that are the survivors will be very, very fast. I think there will unfortunately there'll be a shakeout, but amongst those that thrive, there will absolutely be that. I think that kind of in terms of what else we can anticipate, I think that different formats, different capabilities, whether we start to see more commerce through shoppable video on social networks, or whether we start to see, kind of the roles and functions of individuals expanding who are traditionally in commerce functions, whether it's, a call center agent, or it may have been a store associate that now is enabled and empowered through mobile devices to connect and to communicate. And, does that expand and enable the very best of the teams to, kind of touch more, to touch more people and to influence more people, kind of so I'm optimistic about the future. I think that the jury has been out for a long time. There are a lot of questions as to what's going to happen. Even Forrester's forecast for Q4 holiday sales is pretty flat. But I think that long term, we're basically going to have, some older commerce-focused dinosaurs shaking out, and what we'll be left with is a stronger ecosystem of survivors that are totally innovative and, will transform our experiences.
And Bruce, how do you see e-commerce changing in the next 5 or so years?
Yeah, I think, I mean, maybe just touch on the art and science point first. I think one of the things that's interesting operating at a point in the e-commerce world where we know a lot about consumers is we can see an awful lot of data. But one of the interesting things we see working with so many clients is we get a really interesting lens on how important the art is. And this really goes back to traditional marketing. One of the things often we see in digital marketing is people have really leaned into what they can measure. And what we constantly are surprised about are how powerful brands are, which are typically very hard to measure. But there's a real crossover we see between the power of a brand and the power of their performance or media spend or what they're doing in e-commerce. And the two can be very complementary. We see, for instance, some brands in exactly the same category and exactly the same e-commerce offering with difference in customer acquisition costs. It can be 3 to 1, and it comes down to their brand offering. So I think it's important not to lose sight when we talk about e-commerce, also not to lose sight into the broader proposition of a brand and the art that goes along with that, because it can have a big impact on the downstream performance-based stuff. And I think a lot of marketers have shifted all of their spend to the things that they can measure because there's so much pressure from the rest of the business to go to things that are measurable. But there's a lot of value in things that are more longer term, building trust, building credibility, and that impacts the stuff that we do, which is more on the performance end. In terms of what we see with e-commerce, I think we're definitely, going to see brands get much smarter. There's really a couple of different levers, I think, that most brands are thinking about from a core economic perspective. One of which is, acquiring customers is really expensive. So how do I actually minimize my cost of customer acquisition moving forward? And the best time to do that is when that customer is engaged in your brand. So if they're having a conversation with you, if they're buying something off you, asking them for consent and permission to talk to them afterwards, download their app, sign up to the loyalty program, whatever that particular thing is. That permission is often best gained when people are interacting with the brand, and that has a significant impact on LTV and customer acquisition costs going forward. So brands that are smart about that are leveraging that, and that actually means that their cost to in performance media spend that goes to digital channels like Google and Facebook can dramatically decrease, and their LTV can increase. And then the other dimension we're seeing is brands are getting much more sophisticated around the core economics of their transactions. So how do I actually ensure that I get the maximum outcome with a very efficient customer experience? I'm doing it through customer relevancy, but when I get that right, my conversion rate goes up, my basket size goes up, my ancillary revenue goes up. And those things sound like they're on the periphery, but for businesses that get them right, they can be double the profitability of the next competitor. And in a highly competitive sector, that's like, that's death to the rest of the players. Coming from the airline game, if someone had double the profitability, you might as well pack up and just go home.
I was just going to say, following up on what Bruce said, and just because we've talked a lot about the right offer, the right time. And, one of the things we spent a lot of time talking about is that for a while we were serving up, a wide range. We might have offered 10 things to that customer. We thought they were all great, but what we realized was that, we only had like less than 20 seconds, right, to actually engage that. So, with working with Bruce and the team, right, we took that down from 10 offers to 3, right, as a number to really focus in on. And we actually doubled our conversion rates with fewer offers. And right, doubling conversion rate, what that basically means is that you've given the fan something that they care about. So we're able to then, we would take that to, we gave them something they care about, we increased conversion, enhanced their experience, and a lot more focus with what we're offering them as well.
So basically, you should be curating the choices. And going back to that, that's that art and science thing. There, you have a role in that. As we wind up our session here today, I just want to do a round robin on advice. What advice would you give to the folks listening to this today? And Bose, I'm going to start with you. You're on the spot again.
Oh, fantastic. I love being on the spot. I think the basic advice, which we have said in various ways, but maybe I'll just say again, which is that we have to be human in this process. You know, remember our humanity in it, that we are talking to people who are also looking for the emotion in our brands, and that they want to feel like we are talking to them and not just a stranger. I think especially in these times, I don't know that we're going to get over this moment very soon. And so remembering this very moment in how we feel and applying that to our businesses. I often tell my teams that you should behave like a focus group of one. You know, that if you feel it, then know that somebody else is going to feel it. And so let's just remember our humanity, even as we talk algorithms and personalization and how to get to more people faster, that we should remember our humanity.
I love that. Russell?
Okay, following Bose is not easy there. So,
Never is.
I'm going to stick with, let's all get excited that live shows are coming back. Make sure you keep checking wherever you are in the world, and buy your tickets as they go on sale, and look forward to seeing you at the show.
Love it. Love it. Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to finish up, I would say I think the takeaway that's come up here again and again is that the art and science is really the key. I think you need to have empathy with customers and an understanding that, you know, when they interact with you, they're really inviting you into their lives, and you need to think about it from that perspective. And that's the art piece of this. And the science piece is, you know, there's fantastic technology that can actually make a significant difference both to the customer experience, but also to your bottom line. And in a competitive industry sectors, you just can't stop. You can't hold back. You've got to stay abreast of that. You've got to stay ahead of the competition. And there's huge, you know, some of these technologies I think become foundational for some industries. You know, if you can create such significant economic change, you can do all sorts of new and interesting things in different businesses. And that's the exciting thing that happens.
I'm going to steal Bose's line from earlier because I think it's great advice, which is don't just build a better horse, right? Or a faster horse, right? So I, you know, kind of that faster horse may get you through the next 12 months or 24 months, but you need, you know, kind of that innovation to get you to 2030 and 2040. And, you know, we all want to be around still by 2040.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank our audience for taking the time out to listen about being human, about personalizing, about giving your clients and customers a really fantastic journey and a fantastic experience. And thank you, Rokt. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.